Hello, everybody. My name is Sammy. I am the Events and Education Coordinator at Goosefoot. I run most of our business workshops. I run all of our public events and most of our marketing and social media as well. So graphic design is something I sort of fell into. I do not have a background in it at all, but my last organization, it was me and my boss. So he kind of trial by fire taught me. He was one of those beta user of all of the Adobe software before it was commonplace. So I've picked up a lot over the years. We're mostly going to be talking about just kind of design basics today, but please feel free to ask any questions. This is a workshop, not a lecture. I'm not going to make you hold all your questions to the end. If you have any questions, go ahead and put your hand up. Folks online, go ahead and unmute yourself. I apologize, I can't read chat very well in this setup, so I know one of you mentioning you have a history of throat cancer and can't really talk. That's fine. If somebody else would volunteer to read any of those comments out, I'd appreciate it. But we're going to go ahead and get started. If I start talking too fast, let me know. I do that sometimes. I get excited. So general tips for graphic design, no matter what you're doing, logo, images, social media, print ads, anything. Stay focused. Your piece that you're creating should be accomplishing something very specific. One of the weaknesses sure graphic designers fall into is they try to cram everything as they can in, especially small businesses and profits that just don't have a big budget. Well, we can only afford one ad spot, so let's put all of the important things in that one ad. But that becomes really ineffective. There's so much noise in the world, so much things we're looking at. Even if you have just a newspaper in front of you that you're reading, you can only see so much on the page before your brain just glances over it because it's too much for you. So it is far more impactful to a really strong message, and then people can go to you or go to your website and find all of the other things, but stay focused as much as you can. And on that note, less is more. Even if you have one subject for the piece, you don't have to put everything about it in there. You know, I have some examples in a bit of our Mardi Gras materials. We have, a costume contest, and it's on the poster where there's room for it. I don't have the prizes and every prize donor on the poster. There's not room for that. You can save stuff back for when you're talking to people in person. You can put it on your website where you have the space to put all of the information anyone could ever want about your product. You don't have to put it all in the eye-catching graphic. If you can't cut it, do cut it. Is this really important, relevant, does the piece make sense without it? Then can you get rid of it? Stick to one or two fonts. Now, when you get more experience, and you'll see some really experienced graphic designers completely break it. But that's because they know what they're doing. Can't break the rules until you know why they exist in the first place. So for more impact and to look, we'll be better off if you stick to just one or two fonts in a piece. Usually fonts come in kind of two flavors. There's serif and sans. So a serif is the little extra flourish on a letter. So on this is all sans serif, there's no extra flourishes, but on a capital I, the legs on the top and bottom, those are serifs. Whereas sans serif fonts are just, you can mix up a capital I and a lowercase l because they don't have the extra flourishes. Sans serifs are easier to read at a smaller size because they don't have that extra fluff. Serifs are nice and big and interesting. So that's the ones you use for the eye-catching flourishes in the logos or just headlines of things. Don't be afraid to put people in your pictures. I know this is one of the scariest things to rise over when you're first taking pictures, because it's hard getting people to do exactly what you want in the picture. You might worry about releases and permissions, but it is a lot easier for we as human beings to put ourselves in a position in an image when there is another human being to project ourselves onto. If you take a picture of a restaurant and it's full of people, everybody looking at that picture is going to go, this restaurant looks amazing. I'd love to go there. I could feel the atmosphere. I could practically smell the of the kitchen. If you put up a picture of a completely empty dining room in a restaurant, that psychologically tells us something's wrong here. There is a void of people. There are no people here. And the people don't always have to be the focus of your image. Jewelry is more interesting when it's on a neck or on a hand than it is when it's just sitting on a table or sitting on a black backdrop. So don't be afraid to put people, parts of them in your pictures. White space is your friend. So white space is all of the space on the image that isn't taken up by something. This is white space, all of this space here where there's no words. White space does not have to be white. It can be whatever color is actually there. If you have somebody on one of our beaches in the winter and nobody else is there, and it's just one person standing on an empty beach, everything that is not that person is the white space of the image. So it's just not clutter, it's not noise. Because again, white space helps direct the eye to where you actually want them to be. It helps really increase the effect of your image, and it helps give the eye a place to rest, that they're not expected to take everything in every section. Humans love straight lines and right angles. Now, they don't really exist in nature, but when you're looking at a piece, perfectly lined up edges are really appealing to the eye. You want your text to all be aligned on the same line, whether that's left, right, center. You don't want text to be kind of all over the place jutting, because then the eye jumps around and it's not sure what to look at next. Figure out the purpose of the piece. This really should be higher up because it's one of the first things you're doing. Who's the target customer? Who's going to be looking at it? What action do you want them to complete when they look at it? And where is it going to end up? By this, I mean target customer. If you know your average audience is younger, teenagers or like 40 and under, you can get away with a smaller font than if you know your audience is, retired folks. They can't read a smaller font. End goal action. Do you want them to call you? Do you want them to go visit your website? Do you want them to sign up for something or go buy something? Do you want them to on something particular? Do you want them to take it home with them? The piece needs to tell people that, because we take in so much information a day, you just kind of get paralysis. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But if it's call now, sign up today, visit our website, purchase now, whatever, limited time offer, those things tell people, hey, you need to do this now. If there's no end in sight, if there's no action to take, and this is the second point too, the call to action, telling people what you want them to do, then they're going to kind of file it away in the brain, which means they're never going to remember it again. You need to tell people what it is you want them to do. And then the platform it really dictates the piece. Where is it going to end up? Is it going to be print? Is it going to be a little business card size ad in the paper? Or is it going to be a full-size flyer? Is it going to be up on Facebook? Is it going to be on Instagram? Is it going to be on your website? Because all of these platforms have different standard dimensions. They have different file sizes, different layout requirements. It completely changes the piece. So knowing what you're doing with it before you start really helps you make it actually effective. And then last on the general tips, get a second set of eyes on it before finalizing. Your brain knows what you meant. And unfortunately, our brains have this handy little tool called self-editing. You can read something 12 times and your brain will correct it to what it is supposed to be. I'm sure you have all come across this in an article where a word will be repeated. Be like, come to the da-da-da-da. The person who wrote it just looked at it, their brain self-edited it to just come to, because that's what they meant. So get someone else to look at it for you and go, hey, have you considered this? You left this out. This doesn't make any sense. This is hard to read. If you don't have a second set of eyes, a good thing to do would be to just print it. Because even taking it from your computer screen where you've been staring at creating it to a physical copy in front of you can help you see some of those differences as well. So look at it multiple times. I will tell this story. I used to work with the Hoople Historic Waterfront Association, who does Mussel Fest every year. And we got this gorgeous Mussel Fest poster done up. Whole board looked at it. We were all super happy with it. Got a whole batch of them printed up. And then the mayor of the town looked at it and went, it doesn't say Coopville anywhere on here. Oops, that's kind of important. This is my favorite example of less is more. There's not necessarily anything technically, there's a few things technically wrong with the first image. It's, it's a small space, there's a lot going on, and there's about 4 different fonts. But that one is much more impactful. It draws your eye immediately to it. And they basically say the same thing, the first one has the slogans, the taglines, the web address, social media links. But anybody looking at it, we all know how to use Google. We're just going to type the business name in and get all those same things anyway. So this is what I mean. Things that you think are vital that you have to, but when it comes, it's actually okay to, and experiment with that. Take parts out and see, does this still make sense? Yes, oops, it's vital. If not, maybe we do without it. Here's my example of then. We have our Mardi Gras party coming up. Every time we do it, I have at least 6 different graphics for it. It goes out first. That yellow banner in the top left corner, that is on our Facebook pages. That is the dimension of it, and it's fairly sparse on text. It just has Mardi Gras party, date, time, and location. One on the left below that is our window cling that's on the window here when you pass the building. It is, 60 inches. It's pretty big, but also people are looking at it as they are driving past in their car. It cannot have much on it at all, or people don't have time to read it. So it just has Mardi Gras party, date, location, free. And then there is an address and a phone number if anybody's walking by and has a little time. The one in the middle on the bottom, that is on our website. So actually the only graphic part of it is the picture, the mask, that image alone, and then everything else is text so that somebody looking at a phone can still read it. Because when you put text on an image and then you make it really small, like on a phone, it's really hard to read that. Whereas if you leave it as text, it can really dynamically change it. On the right here is the poster for the event. That's where I can put all of the details. We have a costume contest. Here's the categories. It's free, family friendly. There's beer, wine, and spirits for sale, or soft drinks for sale. There's no food available for sale, address, email, phone. I can put more information on that because a flyer is something someone is looking at from no further than a couple feet away. They can pick it up and take it with them. It's something they can actually read and look at and stop and take it home with them. So this is what I mean by keep in mind what you want it to do before you make it. And don't be afraid to make several versions. Oh, my voice is skipping. Sorry about that. I think the mic pack is falling in my pocket. Let me know if that keeps happening. And just go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, design principles. There's so much that goes into this, and you can take entire college classes on it. But just to boil things down, everything in design falls into one of these categories. Color, obviously, what colors are you using? Balance, you want, sparse things next to big, heavy weighted things. You want small things next to large things. You want things to be in balance. Lines, that's what I was talking about. People love straight edges and right angles. Typography, what typefaces are you using? There's so many fonts. I am guilty of this. I can play with fonts for days. Contrast, you want high contrast in your images. You want, dark text on light colors or light text on dark colors. If there's not a high contrast, it gets incredibly difficult for people to read. Scale, this is really, again, size of it. And I'll get into more of these in specificity. Proximity. If words go with an image, they need to be physically located close together. If there's words here, an image here, and something in between, you're not sure what goes with what. So group things together that belong together. Hierarchy. The most important information needs to be at the top of the piece. And then down from there. Or conversely, you can flip it. You can put the most important piece at the bottom and up from there, but then you put it big going smaller, either direction. Repetition. Don't be afraid to repeat key topics, especially in something that is a series or something that's like bigger and going with someone. You don't think like, oh, we already said the name of the organization. I don't care. Put it in the text, the logo on it, put your address on there. You want to repeat the important things because it takes people reading something multiple times before it sticks in their brain. Direction. We in Western society, our eyes follow a specific track. We start in the top left, and then we go down, and then we go back up to the top right and down. So we read everything in a backwards N. Eastern societies are the opposite direction. They start in the top right and go down. Some societies go this way. So keep in mind that the eye has a natural flow. We've been trained to read like that. And make sure you are giving people what, leading their eye where they expect it to go, or they're going to get lost. And make sure you give yourself space. And that white space is your friend. You need to give the eye a place to rest. You need to break up your text. That's why, paragraphs exist. That's why line breaks exist. People need that space to really give weight to what you're actually trying to say and to give their eyes a place to rest so that they're not overwhelmed. Overall, every single piece you create, be it an image, social media graphic, newsletter, website, print mailer ad, print advertising, they should all work together. They should all look like they actually came from the same place. And how do you do that? By creating a style guide. Style guides can be really complex. They can be one page, but this is your go-to piece that you have a file that you can reference, and you can also send to anybody else you that says, here's our logo. Here's how you can use it. Here's variations. For example, the Goosefoot logo is very long. Horizontal logos don't work everywhere. Some people need a square version. So we have a version where the G is on top of the Goosefoot part. And we know what colors you can use it as. We like the red and black, that's our standard, but we are fine with all black or all white as well. We don't want our logo to be in green or blue because that's not our colors. Color palette, what colors do you use? We have one that we built for our website. It's orange, purple, beige, brown, blue. And then also the red, obviously. Typography, what are the font faces you use? Again, I said this earlier, I am guilty of, I could spend days playing with fonts. And there are some pieces like Mardi Gras that give me that creative outlet. I get to play with fonts for the street dances and for Mardi Gras. But for our standardized pieces, our website, our annual report, our newsletters, we use the same typeface for everything. And I have those written down so that whenever anybody is making something, they can all use the same typefaces and not pick their own of whatever they feel like using. Imagery. Is there a type of picture you gravitate towards? Do you use dark images? Do you use really light and colorful ones? Do you use people in your pictures, or do you try to use people sparingly? What kind of angles do you tend to use? You don't have to get that specific. You can just say, these are the images I like to use, or you can get really specific. It depends on how much of a control you want over the voice of your company and how it gets out there. And on that note, voice, how do you talk? Some companies are very formal. They use very business language. They are very formal. Other companies are very casual. They're friendly. Everybody, we only use people's first names. We use a very casual type of way of speaking. Do you use the Oxford comma? Do you know, is there something to standardize? Do you try to use short sentences? Are mixed sentences okay? Stuff like that. So as I said, you can get really tight or really specific. There's so many options out there. You can honestly just Google. There goes the fire truck. Sorry if everybody at home can hear that. You can just Google example style guides, and there's a ton out there that you can download and use. But this one's Starbucks. I like Starbucks because you know Starbucks as soon as you see it, no matter what element you're seeing. If it's the full logo, if it's just the name, if it's just the color palette, if it's just the font, you know what it is. So they've built, because Starbucks is a huge international brand with tons of locations and everything, they built an entire website that's just their style guide. So we go up here to content. You've got core elements. Here's their logos. Here's the, we prefer to use the siren by itself without the word mark. You can also just use the word mark. They do not usually allow for the word mark and the image to be used together. That's their choice. So you can use that one. Yeah, but you can't use this next to this. And then here's the colors they use. If you've got certain design tools, you can use a color dropper and pick out that exact color. Or they have a whole color section. Green is iconic. They do have a custom Starbucks green. Starbucks green, accent green, used sparingly, light green, house green. So they have specific colors that they use. The voice. Starbucks voice is evolving to unite our brand and meet audience's expectations. Please, a functional expressive voice. Like, this is very marketing speak. But here's examples. This is what functional means. This is what expressive means. Their fonts. Soda Sands, Lander, and Pike. There's a specific fonts that they use and where they use them. So, this is for headers. This is for body text, stuff like that. Illustrations. They have illustrations, and photography is a different thing because, again, Starbucks is a massive corporation. So they have specific standards for how illustrations are used. And then they have specific for photography. They tend to have consistent lighting, shadow, angle, composition, and they use people sparingly.
Is this set up for people who are Starbucks distributors or?
Anybody who wants to, so this is for chains that, independent owners. It's for marketing papers and magazines that are writing articles about Starbucks.
So
It's for anybody, which is why it's public. Yours can be public, or you can keep it internal. Most of mine are internal, just for my use. So yeah, style guides are fun. It's a lot of work to set it up because you want to make sure you're making the best choices when you do it, because it's going to dictate everything going forward. But once you do that initial work of setting it up, it makes life so much easier, because then you're not having to do that work every single time you make another piece. You're being consistent. Let me get a drink of water. Can folks online still hear me?
Sure can.
Great.
Yeah, yes.
Awesome. Okay, so color theory is your friend. Color is something that human beings have been studying for a long time, especially on psychology. I know this chart is very small. You can find a bunch that will break it down even smaller for you. But colors mean something to us as a society. Red is excitement, energy, passion, rage. Blues and purples are they're the creativity, the nurturing, feminine, glamorous. Blue is trustworthy, corporate, clean, honest. Green is, nature and peace and energy. White is balance and calm. Yellow is optimism, excitement, outdoorsy stuff. You know, it's the sun, it's cheer. Orange is friendly, warmth. So colors mean something. You want to find in your logo, you know, something that means something to you. Venture Out Nursery, your guys' logo is green because you have plants. Sometimes it's very simple and straightforward. You also want to use color wheels when you are building your pieces because that's the high contrast and the complementary colors. For something like our Mardi Gras posters I showed earlier, I don't have to go out and find colors. There are specific Mardi Gras purple, greens, and yellows. I'm using those. For our street dances, that color palette changes each year because the image changes. And so I will usually pick out colors from the image to enhance in the words as well. The most basic, really big balance you can have is black text on a white background or white text on a black background. The biggest thing I would be cautious of when you're playing with color is remember that about 8% of the population is colorblind. So don't do things like have green text on red backgrounds or vice versa, because colorblind people can't see that. So it's just a little thing just to be more accessible. Here's an example of a not great poster. Anybody want to chime in on something you see that they did wrong?
They're using a bunch of different fonts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. This is the top line with the title with the most important information is difficult to read. The text is all over the place. It's not in an even line. You don't know where your eye jumps to next. Another thing with this is the purpose was not decided on when it was printed. If you know you're a group that doesn't have a ton of budget, you're going to have to print stuff off in black and white and not color. Choose things that work in black and white. This was very clearly designed in color, printed in black and white, and photocopied a bajillion times instead of printed from the source file. It loses its definition. You can't tell, like, I'm not entirely sure what the bottom image in this poster even is. I think it's a bunch of people sitting in a chair, but I'm not sure. So again, a lot of struggles on that. How about this one? Very busy. Your eye does not know where to start. It doesn't know where to go. Too many different colors that are not complementary at all. A lot of different fonts. And there's very little white space. There's nowhere for your eye to rest, nowhere to take a break. But they felt like they had to cram in all of the important details they could. How about either of these two? The contrast is really poor. And again, too busy. Your eye doesn't know where to go, doesn't know where to read first. At least the one on the left has straight lines. But this one on the right, I think I had this up for about 8 classes before I figured out what it was for. Because I was like, I don't know what this poster is for. It's a birthday party. Contrast, how about these? What do you think they did right?
The original right away, the student show and the date.
Yep,
Is that what they want?
yep. The important stuff is right there at the top. You know, it's not straight lines necessarily. The student in the show is, but it's creative. The form matches the subject matter, and there's plenty of place for your eye to rest. There's a very clear visual language of where you read. You know, you go student show, and then you go down the left side of the page, and then you go back up and read the content in the box. So it's okay to get creative, but also there's only 2 fonts in here. There's the clay font, and then there's the type font. And I technically the logo in the bottom, but I wouldn't count that against your font.
Yeah, and it gets a little busy down at the bottom.
It does get a little busy. This one, really great example of lines and white space. There's the only lines on here technically are the ones around the box of the picture, but they're very cleanly lined up so that you can see the visible line. It's very easy for your eyes to guide down. It was very clearly intended to be black and white, so it's designed that from the start. And they do flip it a little, the content is on the right side and then to the left. But also I would argue that also matches the content of it because Aikido comes from the East. So even though it is Western language, I think it still matches the form of it. And again, this is a flyer, so it's meant for people to take home or meant to be able to stand like 2 feet in front of it and read it. So it's okay that it has a bunch of information because it is all very important information. Nothing in here is, too much. And also, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the little circle on the bottom is their logo. Very nice, simple, clean, basic. Your logo does not have to be a big deal, especially in days of social media, very driven advertising. The simpler your logo, the better for you, the more it stands out. When you have too much going on in your logo, it gets lost on pretty much every social media site in existence. This one, I love it. Nice, clean, simple. There are a total of 3 colors on the entire poster. Very clean lines. Everything is right aligned. And it's got these nice, squiggly accent lines to help break up the content and guide your eye. And again, very simple. It's a craft fair. You know exactly what that is. There's the date, time, location, cost, the kind of stuff they're going to show, and the address. Nothing else. Straight to the point, only the information you need to know. And I'm sure if you went to their website, there would be a bunch more information, but it's not cluttering up the poster that is just supposed to get people to show up and buy tickets. Brochures. Brochures are another thing. You have your one single solid piece, and then you've got brochures. I'll grab both of these. Brochures can be folded in a huge number of ways. That's the fun. The most common kind is a trifold. So there are 3 folds on this brochure. Brochures are very tricky to lay out because of the way they're printed. That is what the print file looks like. So the front panel is all the way over here on the left. The inside panel is over here on the right, and the back panel is in the middle on this side. And then this side is more straightforward. If you're going with a brochure, figure out how you are getting it printed first off. If you are going to print it in-house, you need to build in bleeds. Your piece is not going to go all the way to the end because home printers cannot do that. They can't print off the edge of the paper. So if you are printing your brochure at home, which is fine, you're going to have white lines around the edge of it. If you send it to a print shop, they can, because what they do is actually print it on a much bigger piece than this and then chop it down. And they usually will either help you set it up if you don't have that skill set yourself, or will send you a file and it has to match. And not only with the extra space and the bleeds, but also on the lines of where the fold is. So this back panel of this brochure, I'm going to bring it closer to the camera so you guys can see, has a lot of text on it. It has a lot of text, and it has to be far enough into the page that even if this brochure got printed a couple millimeters one side or the other, the text wouldn't get cut off when you fold the paper over. So you have to be really careful about these fold spaces. So again, work with your printer if you're making a brochure to make sure that it lines up right. You're not cutting things off. This one cuts off, but that's fine because when you look at it, you're going to open it up all the way anyway. This one I really like. This it's a barbershop. Nice, clean, simple colors. They have a very strong color profile, a very vintage feel, which is appropriate for a barbershop. And they've got their logo on the front there, their little tagline, their address. That's all that's on the front. Nice and eye-catching. And then, again, this middle panel here is the back panel, and then the far right corner is the inside front panel. And then the inside's where all the actual detail is, prices, people that they serve, their specials, anything like that. With some print shops, you can even get fancy. There's like different cutouts and different shapes you can do. Those all cost more. Anything that's over standard size always, raises the price more and more. And that's another thing too, when you're designing your piece, keep your budget in mind from the beginning. If you're going to be printing it yourself, you're going to save a lot more money, but there's also limitations to what you can do. The farm stand brochure, if you've ever seen that we put out. We do print it in-house. We don't send that out. And that is 8.5 by 14. So it's legal paper. So we can print it out. Not everybody has a printer that can handle that. And it has a lot of the background colors on that one are white because we can't go all the way to the edge and we don't want it to look weird. If you live here and you have a library card, you can get free printing at the library. I think it's $7 a week. Yeah. Yeah.
Point out that I put my own card here. And
Excellent.
I printed out digital printing, but I think I made a mistake because I did the information, my name, white.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's another thing of like print it at home first just to see if it looks okay before sending it to the printer. Or if you're sending it to a printer, request them to send you like a print preview. So yeah, keep in mind the budget for it. You can design something all day, but unless you have a plan for actually getting it out there, then you've just had a really nice practice. But it's gonna cost you money if you're gonna hire someone professional to do it for you, or even if you're gonna do it yourself, you still have to get it printed somehow. Somebody have a question? No, thought I heard somebody online. Here's another really good brochure. I love their lines. They're so creative. And it makes sense because it's a roofing company. So the color blocks of lines that go at angles really make sense for the company. And again, it guides your eye down. So simple, clean, powerful colors, functional shapes and lines, and sparse information on the front where people are actually going to see it somewhere and pick it up, get interested in it. You want the front to be as clean as possible. If I had my way, this is too busy even for me. I would really like one powerful image of somebody enjoying the corner rather than this conglomeration of multiple images. Unfortunately, we have lots of tenants in this building and we have to make them all happy. So that's how we end up with this. But something that's nice and clean and straightforward is going to get picked up a lot more than something that has everything you think needs to be on it. And with a brochure, you have the beauty of you can put all of the actual heavy details, the big information inside once they've already picked it up. Rack cards. Rack card is this. There's two specific sizes. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think they're like 4 by 9 or something like that. They are meant to, there's no fold to it. It is just one piece of paper, front and back. These have to be printed on heavier stock because if you print it on regular paper, you put it in a rack card, rack holder, and it's going to do that. No one is going to be able to read it because it's hanging upside down. So you have to print it on heavier stock. This one is laminated, which makes it nice and shiny, but you can just do it on like cardstock if you're doing it at home. The idea behind a rack card is you guys have all seen these. They're at the chambers, they're at hotels, they're at various businesses, they're on the ferries. There's a lot of places to put rack cards. The thing is, you don't have control over it unless it's in your shop. So the ideal way to do a rack card is to make it so that it makes sense no matter which side it's put in the rack holder. If somebody picks up the back, it still says Goosefoot on front. Museum of Northwest Art, this one I've got on screen as an example. Their logo is at the top of both sides because no matter if it's put in forwards or backwards, it'll still make sense for somebody to pick up. And again, keep it nice and simple. This side has a lot more text. It's obviously the back side, but the front side is just, here's our mission. Here's our 4 areas of focus. And then a little bit of a description, the address. These are great because one of the cheaper things you can get printed if you're sending it out for professional printing, because again, it's just front and back. You can also make them at home very easily. So make sure they make sense front and back. Put your logo, your name at the top. There are certain keywords, depending on what industry you're in, that Blaze is the company that is responsible for putting them on the ferries, at the airport, and in a lot of chambers and hotels. So if you want them in those locations, you have to contract through Certified Folder because they're the ones that run those. You can't just go on a ferry and put your own stuff there. It will get tossed. And it is fairly pricey, but if that's the market you're trying to reach, it's worth it. And they have done some research for rack cards and brochures that there's certain keywords you can put to get people to pick them up. The first thing again is make sure it has really pretty eye-catching images. I really like this Museum of Northwest Art one because that top one is just fantastic. Somebody looking up close at one of the exhibits, phenomenal. Even the back, or even that's the base of the building. That is what you're going to see if you're walking down the street. If you're doing a brochure, they have done studies that apparently it works very well if you have a free map and you say free map. Even if it's just for like the ferry to your business, it's wild. People will pick stuff up that says free map on it. And then again, make sure you have your address, call to action, what you want people to do. These ones are also really pretty. This is actually a series from the same organization. They have 3 different like main programs. They have education for financing for existing homeowners, or no, sorry, first one, education for people who are interested in becoming homeowners who aren't yet. They have a program to help people who are in a house and need help upkeep and repair. And then they have a program to help people avoid foreclosure if they're financially struggling. Instead of making one rack card, cramming all 3 of these programs on, instead they made a series of them. And each of them uses the primary color from their logo, the green, the red, the yellow. They all have the same similar layout. They all have those nice diagonal lines. They all have, headline text. And they put people on them because at the end of the day, they're doing this program to help people. But you can do that. You can have a series of them. If you have multiple things to promote, multiple things you want to talk about. You guys have classes and product and services. If you have the budget for it, you can work with Certified Folder and you can get 3 or 2 or whatever rack card spaces next to each other. So then instead of a random scattered one of like, oh, here's my business, here's a row of my business. This is really eye-catching. But again, only if you have the budget for it. They're also just great to make up if you want to put them up at your own business. If you go to the farmers market, they're really great to have out so people can take them for more information. Or if you work in partnership with other businesses, if there's another business that carries your cards, we will oftentimes put it out on their counter if you take it to them. So rack cards are really useful for a lot of things. And then they're also just nice and convenient. People can take them, toss them in their drawer at home, pull them out when they're looking for something to do. For you guys, a lot of the local B&Bs or hotels will take a collection of them to put in the guest rooms, stuff like that. Yeah. So there's a lot of places to use them. Social media graphics. There's a whole bunch of them, all for different things, obviously. Social media graphics require their own standardization of size and, clarity and all of that. The one thing I like about the screen that I put them all up together is it shows you brevity, your friend, when you're making a social media graphic. Fewer words you can put on the image, the better. I don't think there's a single one up here that has more than 8 words. Very, very short. I see a lot of local groups that will make social media graphics and they will put as much stuff in there as they can, or just put their print as an image on Facebook. It doesn't work very well. Facebook doesn't like really wordy images, so it actually just won't show it to as many people, and people don't respond to it. So they'll just scroll past because they don't want to read that novel. Any of the information they want to read should be in the body of the text where you can type. The image should purely be, hey, look at me. Just grab their attention. And then they'll read whatever you want to say in the body of the text. But the image should just be, stop, look. This is interesting. This is important. And then Facebook, you can do a lot of stuff with Facebook. It can be tall, it can be wide, really matter. Facebook's pretty adjustable. Instagram, you want to design things to be square because that is how Instagram is gonna crop it. You upload it in different dimensions, but when it's on somebody's feed or they're looking at your page and everything as a whole, they're gonna crop it square. So it has to look good that way. Twitter has different sizes. TikTok is all the full screen, horizontal or vertical. They all have different sizes. And I used to have slides saying, the breakdown, but the thing is they change them all the time. So genuinely, what I do when I'm making social media graphics, I just go to Google and I look, Facebook cover image, best size for Facebook images, best size for YouTube thumbnails, whatever I'm doing. I'll just ask the internet and somebody there will tell me what the current standard is.
That is,
Okay. I think somebody's talking to themselves as they're taking notes. So there's some design tools, and then we're gonna just kind of open it up to questions because again, graphics is so out of subject. Everybody's working on different things. So I'd love to help you guys rather than pack this with too much general information. If you are looking to make your own graphics, there are a few tools you can use. For free, if you already have Microsoft has a lot of cool Word templates in a lot of different formats, brochures, posters, invites, literally everything. The first time you open, ask you, what do you want to make? Here's a bunch of templates and you can search. So that's a really cool tool to use. GIMP is a software that is comparable to Photoshop. So if you don't want to pay for Adobe Photoshop, GIMP is an open source tool that's pretty comparable to Photoshop from about 6 to 8 years ago. Anybody can use it for free. And there's lots of fun tools on there. And then somebody in the room already said, I love Canva. Canva's fantastic. It is a really cool graphic design tool. I will go ahead and show it to you. And as you can see here, I've got Canva under both free and paid because you can do some stuff free or you have to get a paid account. If anybody in the room is nonprofit, you are eligible for free. So we did, but and it's great. I really, because I do know how to use them, I use the programs. But one of my coworkers does not, and she exclusively uses Canva, and it looks great. So there are a lot of really cool stuff under here. You can see that there's collages, presentation whiteboards, Instagram, stories, Facebook, flyers, logos, menus, posters, yard signs, any of these things. So let's go look at.
Sammy,
Yeah.
can you repeat what you said about Canva and being a nonprofit? It cut out.
So Canva has options. You can get a pro Canva account for free as a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. I can send you a link if you send me an email to sign up for free. They want your like IRS tax code or something just to make sure you are, and then you get it for free. You can add up to 4 other people, something like that.
Thank you.
So you can all share the graphics you make together. Let's see. Here's a bunch of options of brochure layouts that already exist on Canva. And you can get even more specific: college, company, medical, photography. I know we had some photographers in the group. So you can look through these of like, oh, I really like this layout, or this one, I like the lines of it. And then you just kind of select the one you want. You have to sign in for an account, which I'm not going to do right now. And it actually goes ahead and pulls it up. And Then once you're into it, you can start changing the font. You can type whatever you want. You can swap out images for something else. You can add new content that's on there. It's really useful, and it's made graphic design so much more accessible to everybody than it was even 5 years ago. It'll give you a file that you could choose to print at home or send to your printer. Yeah, when you download it, it'll actually ask you what format you want it in and if you want the bleeds and blah, blah, blah. So that's Canva. Highly recommend it. It makes life a lot easier when you're starting out and you don't want to use the bigger tools. LucidPress is somewhat kind of like Canva, but you have to have a paid account. It costs money. Just if you like any of the Canva looks, LucidPress is another option. And then, of course, there's always the Adobe Creative Suite. That's a subscription, and it is pretty pricey. One of the more expensive softwares out there. The thing with Adobe programs is they're kind of the standard in the design industry. If you work with a professional designer, they're probably using Illustrator or Photoshop or InDesign or whatever. It's pricey and it has a really steep learning curve. It can be really hard to learn them, especially because, again, they update the software like every year. And you're like, where did that tool go? I use it all the time. That being said, there are a lot of really cool tools out there. I showed this at last week's workshop, but if you have a library card, the library gives you access to LinkedIn Learning for free. And they have tutorials on basically everything you want to do, even from as broad as graphic design, like we're talking about today, to how to use specific software. So, you downloaded GIMP, because how do you do anything? They've got tutorials on that. They've got tutorials on all of the Adobe programs. So highly recommend doing that. Just go to their online resources. You can find it in the list, and then you log in with your library card and you get free access. Great. I'm using it to teach myself video editing. And then, of course, you can always hire a professional. There are quite a few local graphic designers on this island. Would-be attracts artists, and graphic design is no exception. And then most print shops also have a graphic artist on staff. So if you go to Sound Business Center here in Freeland, or you go up to really like working with Whidbey Weekly, they do papers, but they also have a phenomenal print shop. They do all of our brochures and rack cards that I've shown off today, and really good prices. They have a graphic designer on staff too. So Whidbey Weekly is just located up in Oak Harbor, but they'll bring it to you wherever usually. So yeah, you can hire someone to do it if at the end of the day you're like, I don't have the skill or time, or I just don't want to do it. There are also some really cool resources out there. Adobe does have a free color program that gives you suggested color palettes if you tell them one color you're using, or if you pick a theme. So if you upload a photo, like I really like this particular photo, it will pull out colors like use these. So that can make your life figuring out color palettes so much easier. And then WhatFont is a really cool browser extension that you can add to whether you're using Firefox or Chrome or whatever. And it will help you figure out what fonts are on a website. So if you're on somebody's website and you're like, ooh, these are cool fonts, what do you use? Go to WhatFont and you go ahead and activate it. And then you just hover the text and it'll tell you, this is the font and in this size. I want to steal somebody else's font. This is neat. There's also like Font Finder, that's a program you can upload a picture and it'll figure out what font is used in the image. So again, if you see somebody's social media graphic and you're like, oh, that's a neat font, I want to use that, there are tools out there that'll tell you exactly what font it is. If you want to get assets, so assets are the pieces that make your design. If you are using Illustrator or Photoshop, Elegant Flyer has some, freepik.com has some, that's the one I use the most often. These are photos and illustrations and entire layouts that will work in those programs. Or you can also upload them to Canva or whatever too. If you want completely free photos to use, Pixabay is probably my favorite. Whatever you do, do not go to Google and type in something in images because those photos are copywritten. So if you use them, you are recording that you think you won't get caught, because if you get caught, you can get sued. And it's not fun. So don't pull images off of Google Images. There are plenty of paid and free stock photo options that you can get pictures from if you don't have the skill set or the time to take your own photos to use. And you can even get really specific ones. So like both Pixabay and FreePic will have like, here's a person sitting at a computer that you can then take into Photoshop or Illustrator and create something on the computer that they're looking at.
So going back to, like, I know the Adobe suite has design tools. But the design tools you can get. Something. Can you only use it when you're a subscriber? And then when it, like, if you let your subscription go, does that stay there? Or you're, because you bought it when you were early in?
If you do not, if you have a subscription for Adobe, and if you let that subscription lapse at any time, it will not let you open the program. Whenever you try to open the program on your computer, it'll say your subscription has ended. Go to this link, renew it. You cannot close that window. You cannot do anything until you just close the program entirely. There's no way around it.
I didn't think so well. So if I use an image,
Mhm.
they have image. Yeah, person. Does that expire?
That's fine then. I think
That was-
logistically, I don't think you hold the license, but also Adobe is never going to find out. So if you used an image from the Adobe library and then you stopped paying for it, you can keep using that image as long as you have it saved on your computer. You just can't access the library to get any new images. That better?
Yeah.
Cool.
that's actually-
Yeah. Like legally, I think, no, technically you're not supposed to, but you're a tiny business on Whidbey Island. Are they ever going to find out? I don't know.
And also, would you come on to the fact that you downloaded that photo while he was subscribed, so you paid for it?
Licenses get so weird with images. Even if you work with a professional, if you hire a professional photographer to take pictures for you, you have to work out ownership. Because I think the default is technically the artist owns the picture and you just have permission to use it. And they could revoke that permission at any time. If you hire somebody, work out that you have ownership of your images.
So read all the fine print, no matter how small it is, and how long.
Yep, but who among us does that? So legally, I have to tell you, yes, read the fine print. Logistically, you are small businesses and you don't have time for that, and they're not going to chase you down. If you want to use more creative fonts than the defaults that come on your computer, some of the best ones are DaFont, FontSpace, and FontSquirrel. These are all kinds of fonts that you can download if you see somebody using a font that you want to use and it's not on your system. They do have some fonts for sale as well. Fonts can get ridiculously expensive really quickly. But again, I love pretty fonts, so I spend way too much of my time looking at it. I also didn't include it on this, but another one of my favorite sites is Creative Market. They have literally everything you could ever think of if you're designing something. My mouse is too sensitive. Let's go here. Creative Market. Nope, come on. So Creative Market has assets, they have photos, illustrations, fonts, icons, everything you could think of, specific brushes. So again, you can spend days and days playing in here. You know, if you look at old English fonts, here's a bunch of different options. Let's see when they load. They're like super fun. Again, you can spend a lot of money very quickly. You know, one alone is. That being said, I highly recommend checking out Creative Market regularly or signing up for their newsletter. because they do have, where is it? Somewhere on here, I'm not sure. Oh, there we go, free drops. They give away stuff for free a lot. And it's random stuff. You obviously you don't get to control it. So like right now they're giving away the brand identity poster. So if you want to make yourself a nice spiffy looking style guide, here's a good layout for that. They're giving away holographic shape, geometric. So these you can download free. They change them, I think, weekly, something like that, random amount of days. Or you can also subscribe for their drops. So it's $10 a month and you get the like 1,000 things that are included in each monthly drop. So I really like Creative Market. You can find some really spiffy stuff. And if you check back regularly, you can slowly amass a really cool free collection. I saw one the other week that was classified documents. So it's a pack that you can use to like make an image look classified. So yeah, those are some of my favorite assets. So as a review, and then again, we're opening up for general questions. Kids, keep it simple, stupid. Whatever you've got on your graphic, wherever it's going, it can be simpler. Is there information you could remove and still make sense? Brand consistency. Whatever you put out, wherever you put out it, be it the sign in front of your business, your display at the farmer's market, the postcards you mail to customers, the brochures you put on the ferry, the ads you take out, it should all look like it came from the same place. It should have your logo. It should use a pretty consistent color palette. It should use the same fonts, the same voice, things like that. For most things, they need to be readable from a distance. If people are walking by, if they're driving past, if they're looking at a bunch of other stuff, yours needs to stand out and be understandable, has to grab people's attention before they will ever read more. And on that note, visuals are everything. We human beings are very visual creatures. We are guided towards nice, pretty, shiny things. Make sure your visuals are nice. You don't want to use blurry pictures. You don't want to use dark, indistinguishable images. It needs to be attractive, whatever that means to what you're doing. Don't be afraid to put people in your pictures. It's so much easier to project yourself onto something if there's a person to project yourself onto. Be the model yourself. Get a friend to come by and help out. Ask your customers when they shop, hey, do you mind if I take a picture of this really quick? Or even just get candid shots and ask later, because people get awkward when you tell them they're going to be on camera. Or even if you have the budget for it, pay somebody to come model for a photo shoot. Make sure you stay focused. It's so tempting as small businesses and nonprofits with a very limited budget to cram as much in to make sure you're getting your money's worth. But the more stuff you put in, the more worthless it is, because it's too busy and it's too overwhelming and people just skip over it. Make sure you proofread it and proofread it again and get someone else to proofread it. Nothing is more infuriating than getting a finished piece and seeing a really simple mistake. One of my first graphic design jobs, I built the program guide for the undergraduate research conference one year. I spent 2 months on that thing. I had a boss looking at it. We got it printed up, and I had mistyped one of the building names everywhere that building name appeared. So we had to make a whole other thing that had to slip in the book that says, when the building says this, it's actually this. Nothing is more frustrating than that. Make sure you run a test print. Print it off on your computer, send it to the library to get it printed. Hold it in your hand. Even if it's going to be a digital asset, make sure it looks good in different formats. And also changing the format helps your brain actually see it fresh and see what's actually there rather than what you intended to put there. And don't forget the printing budget. It's great if you can do it in-house, but you're still gonna have to print and it's gonna cost you stuff, whether you're gonna have to buy the supplies for your home printer or you're going to send it out. Or even if you go through the library where you could get it for free, you might need to do it at such a volume that you need to either get multiple people involved or stagger the printing over a couple of weeks. Make sure you are planning for how you're actually going to get the finished piece out into the world. So on that note, question time.